Hey everyone, it's Thyworm, and today I want to give you my top 6 reasons to play Last Epoch in its current state, in early access. That is patch 0.7.7e by the way. I recently made a video highlighting the issues the game currently has, and now I will dive into the reasons why I think Last Epoch is such a good game already. Enjoying Last Epoch content? Consider subscribing. 1. True classic action RPG. Last Epoch has its root in beloved old classic action RPGs like Diablo 2. Some would even say it is a remaster of that game. And I guess you'd rather have another studio remaster Blizzard classics than Blizzard itself these days. But as much of a compliment to 11th hour games this would be, Last Epoch is very much its own game. It does, however, borrow a lot of elements from other games and incorporates those elements into Last Epoch itself. The idols come to mind, which are basically the same as charms from Diablo 2, but now they don't reside in your inventory, but they have their own little pouch, just to give an example. Another example would be classes, which are maybe a bit standard. There's a Sentinel, the sword and board character, the mage with elemental spells or with a melee subclass, the Spellblade. There's an acolyte who can take a necromancer role or become a Grim Reaper, and finally a primalist being able to shapeshift to summon companions or to invoke a bunch of totems to lay waste on your enemies. You could argue that none of these classes are really original. I would challenge you to come up with something original in terms of classes, however, after 35 years of game development. It's like coming up with an original pop song. It's not really going to happen anymore, but you can still come up with something very good, although technically speaking, at this point in time, it's probably been done before. It's not so much about originality, it's about how well all this inspiration from several other games is implemented in Last Epoch, and they've simply done a stellar job here. Last Epoch is a deep action RPG, loot-driven, class-based. It has so many skills, passives, items and uniques that enable yet more playstyles, and even though it is in early access, it's already a very mature product. It is in a more than playable state, and it is not hard to sink hundreds of hours into it because all the core elements are there and they are very well designed and executed. It is a true classic action RPG, and it will surely appeal to those that love Diablo 2 and Path of Exile. 2. The skill tree specialization. When it comes to skills, Last Epoch has a unique feature. You see, the hierarchy of versatility pretty much looks like this. First, you pick a class. That determines which skills you can use and which passives you can pick. After a few hours into the game, you pick a specialization, a class mastery. You ascend in terms of Path of Exile to a subclass. This gives you access to more skills. Normally games stop at this point, but Last Epoch goes one step further because every skill has its own skill tree. And there aren't just 10 options in there either. No, each skill you can ultimately earn 20 points for by gaining XP and assign those points in all the different nodes. This allows you to tailor skills to your needs on a very fundamental level. What's nice about these skill trees as well is that they're well designed. It's not this uninspired additional crit chance or plus elemental damage. While those nodes definitely exist, every tree also has a few nodes in there that completely alter the skill. It may convert a damage type into something else. It may change the way the skill is cast or procced. It may change what the skill does in terms of secondary effects, or it may really completely change the skill itself and turn it from a healing ability into a skill that does massive damage. Another great feature here is that the skill specialization trees synergize with each other. Multiple trees allow you to pick nodes that make a skill trigger another skill. Transplant, for example, allows you to trigger Rib Blood. Both have a skill tree, and you can now suddenly mix and match two skill trees to turn Transplant into something really awesome. All this brings us to the next point. 3. Build diversity. You can imagine by now that you can really go all out with any build because there are so many layers that add each their own bit of complexity to your build. It's not just the skills I spoke of. I wanted to highlight the skills as it is such a defining feature in Last Epoch. There are, however, many more systems and items that impact builds. There are the passives, of course, which contain nodes that add passively triggered skills and abilities, both damaging, buffing and healing. Sometimes you can even summon minions this way. There are the skills, of course, adding a huge variety to your build. There are idols, which you find a lot of in late game, and these idols have unique properties. They allow you to trigger spells when you get hit or trigger spells when you do hit. They allow for all sorts of bonuses, for massive damage multipliers for certain skills. In short, for once again quite a massive amount of variety, and these idols are worked on and improved in each patch. Your gear has an influence as well. Set items exist and provide unique interactions, such as the Sun-Forged chest piece, which summons forged weapons when you get hit, and if you have forged 3 of those, you gain 125% fire damage. You can combine this with the Rive skill, which, if spec'd a specific way, also summons forged items. You could then make some sort of fire minion hybrid build simply by using a single item and a single skill tree. There are uniques as well, with unique effects. The Exsanguinous, designed by none other than Ziggy D, brings your character permanently to low life, which then synergizes with passive 3 points, tripling damage at low life in the Acolyte passive tree. There are many more build enabling uniques that incentivize people to try out a completely different build simply by finding the unique. If you enjoy the creative process of making builds, trying out several combinations, coming up with unique options, and maybe coming up with something viable as well, then Last Epoch is absolutely a game for you. It's probably the feature I love the most about this game. 4. Developers. Last Epoch is developed by 11th Hour Games, an indie studio consisting of 19 members if you count the pictures on the website. These guys and girls are pulling off something with tremendous potential. I've been following this game for a year now after I bought it when it hit early access in April 2019, and there are a few things that stand out when looking at 11th Hour Games. First, they have a clear vision for this game. If you look at the Kickstarter, the features described over there are the features that are now, 2 years later, in the game. If you read the dev blogs they put out, there's a clear understanding of what they want to do, what they want to achieve, and what direction the game is headed. 11th Hour Games is very consistent in their vision as well, without being stubborn. Second, they execute their vision. Having a vision and clear strategy is nice, but if you lack the power to execute, you can envision stuff all you want, but it's never going to happen. Last Epoch is a game that since early access launch received consistent and packed patches. Roughly every month there's something new to enjoy as part of a pretty massive patch. To give you an idea, a patch usually contains at least one big new feature. For example, an endgame mode, or a chapter in the story, or a completely new mechanic like shrines or idols. A patch also contains at least a few new skills and skill tree specializations, so you can go ham with a few more skills and build more characters. Each patch contains a bunch of longer standing bug fixes, and last but not least, each patch improves the game's stability and performance. And most of the features work as well, by the way, when they get released right from the get-go. There are always a few hotfixes afterwards, but they fix minor bugs usually, and it doesn't take them more than 2 days to stabilize the game in case it does break for some reason. There's hardly any game-breaking stuff, a nice change compared to some other action RPG developers out there whenever a big patch is released. It speaks volumes to the development practices of 11th Hour Games that they're capable of providing high-quality content at a steady pace, keeping the game fresh. Third, community engagement. 11th Hour Games has a very good relationship with the core community of Last Epoch. As the community, you have a big say in the direction some of the game elements are going. There are community designed uniques, skills, completely new designed skill trees from scratch, the occasional event, and always a very healthy discussion in the forums. Before something big is released, the features are always explained and teased, so the devs already get a bit of feedback. If after the launch of a feature it turns out that the community doesn't like it, you can expect a dev post explaining the rationale behind the implementation. If then, still, there are many comments about how we, as the community, feel that this simply isn't working, the feature receives a rework in the future. A good example is the potion overhaul, which happened a few months back. The devs thought it was implemented well, the community disagreed respectfully on the forums, and a few months later the potions were redone completely and are now much more satisfying to use. All of this brings us to the next point, which is point 5, community. I've been part of the community for a while now, and I have to admit that the Last Epoch community really is a bunch of nice people, always willing to help out, discuss builds or just banter in the Discord. Both in-game as on the Discord, you as a new player are always invited to ask questions and you'll have an answer within seconds. Lately, a healthy bunch of new people arrived in the game after a Steam sale, so the in-game chat was mainly about beginner questions, but you will never see some snarky remarks from the veterans. No, they always treat others with respect and try to help them out. That's really great to see. This point doesn't really require much more explanation, I feel, so let's go on to the last point. That's point 6, no annoying features. Now, this is maybe a bit of a weird point, but hear me out. I've been playing this game for around 300 hours by now, maybe more, and normally speaking there are features at this point in time where I'm simply getting annoyed, right? In Pagan Online it was the lack of endgame combined with the lack of build diversity that stopped me from playing. In Bolton it's the same thing basically. In Grim Dawn I get annoyed with lack of randomization in the campaign and I don't really feel like doing it again. In Path of Exile I don't like that I need to know so many different things and know so much about the game that it becomes annoying at some point, even though I play that game a lot and I really love Path of Exile. I'm not saying Last Epoch is a perfect game, of course, because it's not. I'm just trying to say that in my many hours of playing the game, I haven't really found a feature that I was really annoyed with, and that's maybe worth mentioning. I don't really mind that this game has some repetitive endgame content because I always have a reason to run it, because I always have a character that I either want to get more gear on or that I need more XP on to get more passive points. I always find a reason to play this game and there aren't really many things stopping me from playing this game. It helps a lot that every month there's something new coming up as well, like we talked about. To conclude, all in all I think the pros in this video heavily outweigh the cons in my other video, and I would really recommend this game to anyone who's into loot-driven classic action RPGs. You'll be part of a great community, you'll be messing around with a great game, and I'm sure you'll have a lot of fun doing so. And that is all on Last Epoch for today. Follow me on Twitter at Thyworm. Thanks so much for watching and making it to the end. See you all soon. Love you all. Bye bye.